Good morning again. That was very kind, Dr. Dudas. Yes, so it has been a journey and it has been a long journey, hopefully coming to an end. I'm starting another journey at the end of a couple months. I changed the topic a little bit to call it my journey instead of a tale, because when I had started off, I wanted to talk about life in general, the differences in life in general, as well as the healthcare systems, but it became a bit too extensive. So I trimmed it down and there. So disclosures wise, these are just my opinions. This is my journey. This is my, my personal experiences that I'm going to talk about. This is meant to be a light hour just for a little bit of enjoyment. If you plan on taking away any big messages, it's just going to be probably towards the end of the hour. And don't make decisions on where to get treated based on what I'm presenting today. This is just me talking about a few things. Okay. Biases, I have several biases, and I needed to disclose and tell you about all of these. The three continents, of course, you probably guessed that I call home, are Pakistan, where I was born, the UK, where I spent a long time growing up, as well as doing some training, and then coming here. So I have biases. Pakistan is my country of birth and was my first home. My parents' home is still there. It's a luxury life there, different from elsewhere. And yeah, I have a huge family there. Extended, my immediate family is more abroad, but I have a lot of family members there still. The UK, did a lot of growing up. I became a grown-up person in the UK, I feel. I had my first little independent home. That little apartment is still close to my heart. UK has a lot of history to it, a lot of character, just everything, buildings, roads, everything that appeals to me a lot. So yes, I have a bias there too. And then the US is my first real home. I have my little family here, my husband, my kids. It's my current home. It's going to be my home for the foreseeable future. Bias there as well. Just getting it all out there for you. So yes, kind of wanted to talk about so many things that had to discipline myself and kind of just bring it down to two big things that I will be talking about. The healthcare systems, my perspective, the journey of a junior doctor through the three healthcare systems. And then so another topic which is close to my heart is the role of philanthropy in medicine and in general. So going to Pakistan. Sorry, the colors are, yes, a bigger disclosure actually for this morning is that when I was trying to transfer my presentation from my Mac to a Word document in PowerPoint, some of the things got messed up. The pictures are all, animations are all gone, colors are all messed up. So just, it is what it is, but it looks reasonable, I guess. So med school is 5 years. Both in the Pakistani system as well as the UK system, you do not require to have a pre-med degree. It's essentially out of high school, you are in med school. And then there is 1 year of internship. Now, the interesting thing, which is a big difference that I felt, was that you have to actually get your first part of your written boards done when you're in your first year of training as an intern, because that dictates what you're going to be doing next. So are you going to be becoming a trainee officer, or are you going to be becoming a medical officer? The medical officer is essentially, there's not much career progression after that. You kind of stay static. The trainee medical officer, so it doesn't matter which specialty you're in, you're a trainee medical doctor. And then it's followed by trainee medical doctor in surgery, or trainee medical doctor in pediatrics, trainee medical doctor in radiology, and it goes on. So that's like, that's 5 years of training. At the end of which you do your exit written boards as well as oral boards exams. And so you finish training. Now, the interesting thing at that point is whether you want to go into private sector or you want to get a state job or a contract. Now, the state job is what everybody aims for. And I'll tell you in the next couple of slides why that is, and that's so different than what we have here as well as in the UK. So you get a state job, and the biggest caveat in that is that you get transferred, which means that you're just thrown wherever they need you. Family may or may not be transferred there, but you have to go. And if it's a national level contract that you have, then it can be anywhere in the country. If it's a provincial contract, then you are within the province or within the state, if you may call it so. And then another big thing after coming out of a trainee job and trying to transition into your state contract job is that you have to serve in an underserved area for 2 to 3 years before you're allowed to come back to civilization, I call it. So that is usually, quite a difficult task for many to achieve, because the underserved areas are truly underserved. So there's a lack of pretty much everything in those areas, and those 2 or 3 years are pretty hard on any professional. And then coming back is another story. So you go to the underserved area, and if you have a straight contract, then you have to wait for a job opening actually to be able to come back. And then you come back as a junior registrar, which is equivalent, I would say, to a senior level trainee here. And then you kind of work your way up slowly through the years to professorship. It's a long journey. So this is essentially just a comparison of state-owned as well as privately owned hospitals. So the bigger facilities, the more provided, should I say, facilities are usually state-owned. The private hospitals, they're usually individually owned, which is not what I've seen elsewhere. I think elsewhere there's partnerships, there's more than one person involved, whereas in Pakistan it's like a person owns the hospital and everybody works for that person. That person's obviously very rich. So usually these are smaller facilities. There are some exceptions. In my hometown of Peshawar, there is a huge private hospital, really well equipped, cardiac surgery wise especially. So there are exceptions, but treatment is expensive. And that kind of brings me to the inequality of treatment, because in state hospitals, you get the facilities and you get free treatment. Most of the treatment is free. The doctors are paid by the state, and you do not owe them anything. You can request a second opinion, third opinion, 7 opinions, whatever. It does not cost you anything. However, equipment and facilities wise, you may have to provide yourself, which is pretty hard, given, you have to maybe buy your own staplers even for your operation, which tends to be pretty hard for some. It's a huge staff. So state hospitals employ a huge staff of all, all the hierarchies, all their juniors, seniors, people who help with maintenance and cleaning and everything. It is actually a status symbol to be working in a state hospital as opposed to a private hospital, whereas the status symbol for the commoner is to be treated in a private hospital, because you can only, you just have to pay for everything. Another interesting thing which I found as I moved and trained abroad was payment is upfront. Whatever you have to, whatever the anticipated charges are, you have to be able to pay them upfront to be admitted to the hospital, which I found appalling, just saying. So you have to actually be able to do that. Another little comparison. Salary is pretty good in the state hospitals, can be comparable in the private sector, but not really. Hours. That brings me to the hierarchy again. As a junior doctor, of course, you spend a lot of hours in the hospital. But as you go up along the ladder, the less and less hours you're expected to work in the hospital. You hardly ever find a professor in the unit after 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. in the morning. They come at 7 and they leave in a few hours, just kind of come in, and unless they're operating, which is a different story. But I found that coming abroad, I found that really interesting that, we're usually here, all of us. You get a car, you get a house, you get a lot of facilities if you have a state contract. Some houses are even fixed use. For example, if there's a house for the program director, then the next program director moves in. It doesn't get given to anybody else. So it's an interesting fact. Others are first come, first served basis. So if there's a place available, you'll get it. If there's not a place available, then you just put in a waiting list somewhere and you just wait. However, you get paid. If you're not in a state house, then you get paid to pay your rent. So it's a kind of a win-win situation, pretty much. In the private sector, none of that. That's why I said, everybody tries to get a state contract, and you are considered lucky to land it initially in the beginning. All the trainees are automatically state contracted and automatically work in state hospitals. Some of the more bigger private institutes now have contracts with the state, and they will provide training, but without the other facilities which come with the state contract. And there's more litigation in the private sector, a lot more litigation, because of which, and then I'll come to the training side of things, because of it, there is literally no autonomy at the junior level. You just do whatever the attending essentially wants. In the state hospitals, on the other hand, there is, I think, a bit too much autonomy at the junior levels. So because the seniors, they have limited hours that they work. It's especially if out of hours, you're just like, one kind of transitioning from this slide to this slide, you're probably wondering why anyone would leave that, right? This slide kind of explains why I personally decided that I needed something different. I wouldn't necessarily say better. The training is there. You're thrown in the deep end of the pool and you learn to swim. You swim, you may cause, some damage here and there. Usually, the seniors are there to help if you're in trouble. But you learn, and you learn quickly. Training is only 4 years, and you come out at the end of it. But there is a lot of times that there's a lack of supervision. And there are too many trainees, way too many, because everybody has to train, whoever wants to be trained in a few state hospitals. So there's one case is scrubbed by 4 or 5 trainees. You hardly ever get anything. If you're a junior level trainee, you can watch, yes. Paper charts. We have paper charts there. The private hospitals do have EMR, and it's a learning curve there as well. But yeah, everything is paper chart, or sometimes there are no charts at all. The patient just tells you a story, and you listen to the story and try and deduce what happened to them in the past 10 years, or just send some more investigations and get a CAT scan and find out what's going on. So as I said, training wise, you learn everything. It's a hard way to learn, I feel. And I felt like I wanted a different type of training. Trauma. And that kind of makes me sad, is that there is basically no trauma system. Traumas are brought in by family, by ambulances, by lay people who are at the scene. Anybody can just bring in a trauma. C-collar, no C-collar, backboard, no backboard. They just come in. And they're literally, in my experience that I had there is no triage as well. So, you just come to the ER and then you get treated whenever they get to you, which I found was a bit unacceptable. So that's and then in the private sector, again, there are not very many trainees there, but they do employ medical officers to do the job. Which are the non-training grades. And yeah, they do the job, but there is lack of training just based off of the fact that there is a very, very high risk of litigation, and they're just too busy. They're run by money, they are for money. So there isn't really time to train people. So that is not what, I observed there as well. And that was also not something that I wanted to do with my life. So just a few facts. What I want to kind of draw everybody's attention to is there's a reverse nurse to doctor ratio. I don't think that's true elsewhere, most of the countries in the world. There are more doctors than nurses. What this means practically is when you are a junior doctor, and I was a med student there, morning rounds or pre-rounding means getting sometimes phlebotomy rounds done. Getting your own vitals, you do your blood pressures, you carry a blood pressure cuff around with you, manual blood pressures, yeah. basically all the small things. Sometimes you're hanging drips and giving IV antibiotics and giving Zofrans to people because you just have one nurse or two nurses working, which is why you learn to be really efficient in them. When I was there and I observed the interns, they would get all of that achieved in like half an hour, and you'd be amazed. But when you have to do it, you just learn, right? It's just like here, we come in the beginning, it takes us an hour to pre-round, and then it takes us 20 minutes as we are nearing the end of training. So the international recommendation, I put it up there for you, is 4:1. I've reversed it, sorry. It's a 4:1 ratio, doctor versus nurse, but it's kind of, we're getting there in the US, but not in Pakistan. Your name. So you have a generic name, right? Nobody knows your name. Nobody knows your last name is like non-existent. Nobody knows your last name at all. Your first name is the one that you go by. And I picked Marguerite, she's not here. Anyway, so if you must use a name, otherwise you're just Dr. Sir. Doesn't matter you're a woman or a man, you're a Dr. Sir. If they must use your name, which in some areas is actually considered an offense, they use your first name. Your status, you're basically God. You just, whatever you say is right. Whatever you tell them the treatment plan is, that is the treatment plan. It's funny and sad and all at the same time, I should say. Your opinion is actually a verse from the Holy Book. You tell them this is going to happen, and that is what happens. Rarely will anyone challenge a doctor's opinion. Rarely. And for many people, my friends, people who were with me in med school and then coming out, that worried us because we felt like that was a lot of responsibility to be, to not have that feedback, to not be able to have that discussion. Yes, in the cities, yes, you can have a discussion, but even then, the medical knowledge, even in an otherwise educated family or educated person, is pretty low. So yes, you're the God, you make decisions. Your average patient, I put this picture up there because this was supposed to be animated with one showing after the other, but here we are. It's a spectrum. You get really, really strict, really conservative people, and you get pretty lenient, less conservative people. Whoever shows up, you just have to talk to them and deal with them and treat them, okay? Yeah, this dude might show up too. It happens. Then comes the question of who do I need to talk to after I finish the operation? Actually, let's talk about first who needs to talk to whoever needs to be talked to. The person performing the operation is the person who does the talking. And if that's the intern, that's all that happens. It's the intern who goes and talks to the person. If supposedly overnight an intern and a junior trainee medical officer has performed a laparoscopic cholecystectomy, that's the team then the patient is going to get, okay? There are some areas, some parts where nobody will talk to anybody but the doctor who's performed the operation. So if it's the professor of surgery next day rounding and telling the patient what happened and this and that, if he has not performed the procedure, they don't want to believe him. It has to be the person. So yeah, then comes the question of who do I need to talk to? They tell you they're outside. And what do you find outside? A whole family, blankets, water coolers, food, lunch bags, everything. They're all sitting out there, right? So then you go out there and you look at people and then you're like, so who do I need to talk to? A little tip, if you ever end up in a situation like this, always look for the elder female in the crowd. She's usually the one you should be directing your talk to. Trust me. And never, ever, ever talk to the wife when the mom is present. Just a secret. Don't talk to the wife, okay? Talk to the mother. If there's a grandmother present, talk to the grandmother. If you do that, you're on good terms from the first second. If you do not do that, you're just not going to recover. Okay, so although the image portrayed usually in television series and media is different, it's a very female-led family system there. The eldest female in the family sits there quietly, does nothing. Everybody just serves her, and then grown-up men, women in the family, they make a decision, and then she says no, and then it's a no. So yeah, it's a no. You can't do it, you know. If she doesn't like the hospital, you go to another hospital. That's the end of the story. Yeah. So make eye contact with the eldest female in the crowd. And ideally, you found the mother or the grandmother. And yeah, if there's a wife and a mother right next to each other, just talk to the mother. Save your life. All right, so that's kind of pretty much it about Pakistan's system in a small nutshell. Coming to the UK, the NHS. So it's free. It's definitely free. It's 100% free. It's not a myth. It's actually free. There is a little bit of out of pocket that you pay sometimes for visits and medications, but that's pretty much it. However, you have to be a national, a full national to be able to do that. So anybody visiting, anybody who's on work visas and things, no. So then you have to find a way to treat yourself when you are in those categories. Very, very efficient in cost saving. If you don't need it, you just don't do it. There is a huge focus on clinical examination. You have to do a digital rectal exam every time you perform an abdominal exam. Just throwing it out there. That's part of your general physical exam. But yeah, huge emphasis on clinical examination and a focus on decision-making based on your examination findings, rather than waiting for a CAT scan or things. Talking about CAT scans, you actually have to sometimes call and talk to the radiologist why you need a CAT scan, if it's not clearly indicated. You have this little reading room that you go to, and you're like trembling as a junior doctor, and you actually don't know why you need the scan. And you go in there and you sit down, and then they ask you lots of questions about what you need and why you need it. And you need to know everything about your patient. You must have examined them inside out 10 times. And then you talk to the radiologist, and he may still say, no need for a scan. And then you don't get it. So you make some decisions based on just exam findings. Yeah, this slide got messed up a little bit. I apologize. But anyway, so training structure wise, again, just like Pakistan, the UK system, you do not require to have an undergraduate degree to get into med school. You can go straight in. And then after that is a bit of a long process. So you start off as an intern as an FY1, which is a foundation year 1. That is in the first year of your, it's equal to the internship that we do here. And then FY2 is called a senior house officer, SHO. Yeah, it's called an SHO. It's not, there's nothing criminal about it, but it's called an SHO. So the FY2 is a glorified intern when you're supposed to be the senior house officer, but you're kind of like, you don't know, you're doing some of this, and then you are going to the OR as well, but you're kind of like just standing there doing not much kind of a situation. And then you go into core training. So the transition between foundation training and core training is another interview and another application process. You do that. It's not as large scale as the specialist training, but yeah, you do your, and I'll talk about the interview process in the next slide. That's also a process. Then you get into core training, which is called CST or CMT, or other specialties based on what you're doing. So core surgical training or core medical training. That's another 2 years. Once you do that, and those years are another senior house officer SHO years, in which you actually get to the OR a little bit more than your first 2 years, but you're still not getting much because there's an ST3 to ST5 usually in the operating room, and they kind of get the bulk of the operations. I did my core training in UK. The good thing about that, because of the links with Pakistan, is that if you come over from there, then you are exempted from a few of the first few training years. So that's a good thing. But anyways, then you apply for an ST position, which is a specialty training position. That's another 5 years for surgery, and then it's different for different specialties. So the training that we have here kind of equals to the ST training that you have in the UK. How do you get that job? Everyone goes to London. You all go to London for your interview. There's no other place. The interview is a huge process. It takes weeks, sometimes months. And it's not really an interview. It's a mini exam. So you go there, you have stations, you actually have patients, you have, there is one station that you talk about your CV and your achievements and everything, and that's pretty much it. The rest is all clinical. You have to do a graft here, there as well. There's a lot of practical stuff involved. So it's actually an examination. And then you submit your ranking list. Ranking is based on regions or deaneries, they call them. Within the deanery, you can be placed anywhere. So be prepared to move is essentially what I'm trying to say. And if you list more than one deanery, then you can be thrown anywhere in the country. And then your rank, the rank list comes out, and that's a national rank list. So everybody is pooled together, and then everybody is just spread out. So you can end up anywhere, basically. And you have to score actually very, very high to be able to match into those 200 and something training positions, which are available nationally. So it's a really tight bottleneck between the core training and the specialist training. And usually in this time, people take a little bit of time out for research to make themselves more competitive for the more competitive fields that there are, which is essentially what I did. I stepped out and I did a couple of years of research. Then once you are kind of done with a year or two of research, you reapply into the ST training. You can always apply, get into ST, and then after the first year of training, come out of it and do research. But the general thing that people do is that you do research between the core and the higher specialist training. Every day. You have to dress up every day. Yeah, I put size in there. That was for me, that was a hard thing to do. Teaching rounds every day, pretty much. Professorial teaching rounds, you get grilled, and you get grilled. Yeah, you do, as I said, sometimes you do your own vitals and phlebotomy in the UK as well, especially in, the centers where difficult access patients come, like transplants and renal patients and things. You might have to do all of that yourself. What is not allowed? It's all in red. Scrubs out of OR? No, you absolutely cannot do that. Anyone finds you in big trouble. You have to wear heels to work, or smart dress shoes. If you don't do that, I mean, you probably can wear some sneakers and things, but it's frowned upon big time. White coat, not allowed. Absolutely not allowed. You cannot wear a white coat. They have a bare below elbows policy, so you can't wear a watch, no rings, pretty much. Bare below elbows. Now, there were other definitions of bare below elbows then as well, which probably are not appropriate for this forum, but there are a lot of memes out there. But yeah, bare below elbows, you cannot have anything from elbows to fingertips. As you can see in this picture, you just fold up your sleeves and you have nothing on you. Paper records. Somehow they still have paper records. There's EMR in some places, but most of the places that you go to, you have paper records. And then this is what our faces as interns used to look like when we had to go and find a patient chart. There's a huge medical records department, but sometimes you have to go and dig things out yourself, especially for for a clinic patient that you need that extra bit of information. You just send the intern over to get that file, and then the poor intern just goes through rows and rows of files to bring that folder to you. Another interesting thing with the paper records is that morning rounds, you actually carry the folder with you to the patient bedside and you write the morning rounds in it, right? So when you're doing that, imagine surgery rounds, right? The attending, the junior and the senior registrars, everybody just whizzes into the floor. They're going straight to the patient's bed, and that the poor intern is trying to first go to the notes trolley, get the folder, then go over, join them, and somehow do not miss anything, and then write it all down and put it back in there, and then join the round. So yeah, you learn to do that, and you do it. We used to do it. I found a little solution. So I used to carry continuation sheets with me, and I would just write my morning rounds on the continuation sheets and put them in the folders later. What the problem with that was that every day I had a new sheet of paper with 1.5 side empty and just this much writing. And then at the end, putting it all together used to be a big problem. So then I stopped doing that and just scrambled and got paper charts. Just a few other statistics. Wanted to kind of talk about the 40-hour week. Everybody is aware that there is a 40-hour week there. We all had a 40-hour week. However, for specialties like ours, surgery, there was an option of opt-out. So opt-out meant that you just signed a paper, put it in, and then you could work as many hours as you wanted. And as surgery residents, we all did. We all just opted out. So we worked more than 40 hours, but even like more than 40 hours, you're not working too many over the hours. Overnight ORs, emergency surgeries, anything that can wait until the morning, just waits until the morning. You take only very sick and very emergency cases to the operating room. ORs usually, you just don't do it, which was an amazing difference for me when I came here. I loved it. Your name. You're a lady, and then you keep telling people you're a doctor, but you're a lady, or you're a dear sir. And from dear, I remember I wanted to put that in there, but I didn't. Emails they all start with dear something. So when I came here, I started writing emails with dear so and so, and then my husband was like, "Hey, we don't do it here. We don't do dears. Just write the name." It's like, okay, all right. So anyways, all emails start with dear. I still get emails from there with dear on it, and I just smiled. Your role is unknown. You just nobody. Opinions, please keep them to yourself. Unless you're asked to express an opinion, just don't. Stand in the queue, right? And don't talk. That's a global thing in healthcare, outside of healthcare. Just stand in a queue, and I couldn't help myself putting these up there. You have long queues, and people are not talking to each other. Nobody talks to each other. This is my favorite quote about queues. It's just like there's a queue, and then there's a line of unimportant letters behind it. This is very, very common. Very, very common. You stand at a train station, you just stand there forever. You're standing outside a clinic, you just stand in a queue and you read a book and you just don't talk. I loved it when I got on the plane to the US, United Airlines, and everybody was just talking to me. So I got down here and my husband said, "How was your trip?" And I was like, everybody was talking to me. And he goes, "So what's different about it?" I was like, "Well, nobody talked to me in England unless, there was a reason to." So I found that amazing. Your average patient, this is what they look like. You're never sure if they're smiling or frowning or unhappy or happy, or they're getting what you're saying. There's just no expressions, right? Or an expression like this. I love this lady, by the way. Then, so you talk to them, and then at the end, you're like, "I don't know if I got a consent because I have no idea. They said yes or no." Finally, you get there. But I loved it. I was like, this is so, well, at that time, I had not been in the US, but in Pakistan, everybody is just going to give you an opinion. There is an opinion, and there's like wrong, right, whatever, not about surgery, but everybody has a say. The whole family is talking about a consent, and you're like, what? In England, nobody wants to talk, so here we are. Who can I call after surgery? That's another interesting question that you pose to people there. In Scotland, they'll tell you, here's a wee list of numbers. And then the wee list is usually this long. And then you just kind of have to, and the statements which accompany that wee list of numbers is usually there's so many pleases and kind and is in there that you can't really say no. You just take the list and then you stare at it and then you call. And who do you get? It's usually somebody who requires a lot of protocol. So there's a lot of protocol involved. And I guess if you go far back enough, everybody's a royal there. You're on the phone and then you realize that you're talking to this lord or this lady, and then you have to have some protocol. You learn that as you go. A few other things which I found interesting. Trauma activations, unless you're like in a busy trauma hospital, you don't really get them. In my 2 years there, I did not get any trauma activation. I did not go to a trauma. If there's a fall with a broken neck or femur, it's an orthopedic consult. If there is a bicycle accident with a broken bone, it's an orthopedic consult. As a general surgery resident, you cover orthopedics though, as part of your call. So you get to see them, but it's not an activation. Traumas are usually, you just hit with a stick somewhere. And, if it should happen, this is what happens then. Everybody gets so excited. Everybody just runs to the trauma bay. And, my friends told me stories about how their response is to traumas, even if it's trivial and you know that you're not going to do anything, not going to learn anything from it. Everybody just responds. There's a huge number of people there. That's kind of where I end my NHS talk, and I come to the USA. I've been here 6 years, going on 7. Haven't figured out any of this. If any of you can help me, I would love that. But my thoughts when I came here was, oh my God, this many applications. I had come from 1 application per job kind of a thing. And then you have to travel everywhere for interviews, not just to London. So that was a different thing for me. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the fact that every day I just sat down and did applications. I did come after the match. I missed it. So I was just looking for like standalone positions here and there. That might be the reason that it felt like I was doing too many applications. But I felt there were way too many applications and way too many interviews. Insurance, I don't know. Who's the force behind it? I have no idea. I also do not know whether it's a good thing to be rich or poor here. I say that because I know in Pakistan, if you're rich, you can go to the private hospitals and get whatever, or be flown abroad and get your treatment wherever you want. In England, it doesn't really matter. You just get it. Here, I don't know. Does it make a difference? Does it not make a difference? I personally do not feel it makes a difference, but I haven't experienced it. So that's a question there, which I will try and figure out in the next few years. Resident life scrubs, man, I love that. I love the idea that I can be in scrubs all the time, anytime. I can wear sneakers. I can have my feet up on the desk. Who cares, right? I love it. we do sometimes. So I think the friendliness of everything struck me big time when I moved there. And it's a contrast, it's a stark contrast because it's inappropriate culturally in Pakistan to be able to do that globally with everybody. In England, just nobody does it. You have very, very, work relationships are very work related and personal relationships are really personal. And there's a big gap between them. So scrubs, yeah, love them all the time. Yes, bring it on. Hierarchy. So the idea of staffing things with senior residents, in my first couple of months, I just could not understand why I had to do that because I never did that. So in England, you just talk to the decision maker. If that's the ST5, you talk to the ST5 and then that's pretty much it. In Pakistan, you just make your own decision or talk to the attending if they're available. So the fact that I had to staff with the junior resident first and then the junior with the senior and then probably the attending, and I was like, wow, this is interesting. So that was something completely new. And for those of you who've not been outside the US system, that is not how things are done in the 2 systems that I've at least been. And then this feedback thing that in the beginning that I heard was yelling, and I was like, that's a word, an interesting word. And I'd come from somewhere where everything was discussed over a cup of tea in an office. So that I found it interesting, and now bring it on. Love it. What I liked, or I don't know, was what I found different here. Scan it, just scan everything, scan it again and then again. And if you need a 4th scan, just do a 4th scan. Who cares? Do it. Man, that was so refreshing because I remembered my times going into that dark office, sitting down with the radiologist, trying to convince him I needed a scan. It was not granted sometimes. Consult. Yeah, just call everybody. Just consult this, consult that. You know what's the treatment gonna be, that TP fracture which is broken? Yeah, go call. I'm glad we came up with that policy though. That's not what happens elsewhere. There's very, very few consults. And I think the NHS is all about conserving things, conserving money, conserving extra effort. In Pakistan, you just, you consult if you really, really need it. Otherwise, you just do it all yourself. And go and see the patient. It doesn't matter. You might be the 11th one, 15th one, just go and see the patient. And I love that. I love the fact that, so that kind of translates into this missed injuries bit here. Because of all the levels that we go through here, because of the fact that there's so many eyes which are laid on scans and patients, the incidence of missed injuries here, at least what my experience has been, is pretty rare, if any. And I think I find that really important, and it is important. Supervision. all the time, anytime available supervision is gold to me. I found in the beginning, I found that that I was able to focus more. I was able to perform better because I knew that if I mess anything up, there's always somebody who can look at things and talk me through things, and that's not available elsewhere all the time. Prompt treatment, minimal wait times. I came here, I started off on the acute surgery service, and within a week I could just do a primary survey with my eyes closed, having not done any trauma before that. So I think it's amazing that the volumes and the work that we do here is, yeah, trauma is, I think, the biggest difference that I have felt. Trauma systems here are absolute amazing, absolute amazing. There is none in Pakistan, and in England, as I pointed out, it's very, they're not paged as traumas unless it's a real big trauma, a highway bus crash or something. They just come in as an injured patient and, broken bones, broken nose, appropriate consults are placed. Here, 11th P1 tonight, bring it on. We all go there. We all have the same level of energy. And I found that really amazing. Now I'm used to it. I tried to think back to the days that I was new here, and I found that really, really amazing. We do feel like this sometimes, though, on the 11th P1 trauma, but usually the response is this. Just a few start things there. Of course, I highlighted the 80-hour week that we work here. That was a different lifestyle for me. I'm still recovering from it. But yeah, it was, so if you put it in perspective, however, you do the same number of hours that you would do, say, in England for 8 years, right? And you'd probably be getting the training, the real surgical training, I call it, in the last couple of years when you're actually operating, because there's a huge hierarchy there. So compressing it into a 4-year training, 80-hour week, I think it works. I've learned more here in the 4 or 5 years than I did, actually in the first couple of years than I did in my 3 years of training elsewhere. And we have a good nurses to physician ratio, and we have a lot of nurses. I know it feels wrong, right? I put it up there because every time we're talking about how short we are with things, but if you compare it with other systems in the world, we are pretty good. We're pretty good here. Your title, you become a doctor finally. Surgeons are called Mr. in Mr. or Miss or Mrs. in England. There still are. So when I talk to my peers over there or my supervisors who I still talk to, I forget to call them Mr. and I call them doctor, and they just get confused. So they're all Mr. or professor if they're professor. Your role is the doctor, you're a real doctor. Your patient, and this is the best part that I like about, and this kind of goes back to whether, is it good to be rich or poor? Doesn't matter, right? It does not matter. Anybody who comes through the door, doesn't matter if they have money or not, doesn't matter if they have insurance or not, we just treat them. And, they get the best treatment without any questions asked. And I think I found that, in the beginning, I found that amazing. Now I'm used to it. I don't think we should get used to something like this. I think this is an absolute asset that we have here. Somehow somebody gets the bill and it gets paid for, at least from what we've seen here. It may be different elsewhere. So I think that's kind of it, right? You are a patient, you get treated, that's the end of the story, which kind of walks me into a topic which is very close to my heart, and I kind of wanted to talk about that. I have little time left, so I'll try and make it quick, but philanthropy. I'll skip this, and I love this definition of philanthropy. Usually desired, but sometimes present. I don't know how much you agree with it, but I feel that I agree that anybody who wants to be a doctor has some desire to be this person that I'm going to talk about now. But do all of us achieve it? I'm not sure. Why am I talking about this? I have a huge, well, I don't know how many of you are aware, but I have an early interest, a huge background In school, I was part of a huge money-raising team for the Shaukat Khanum, which was the first cancer hospital in Pakistan. I was very young. I got a badge. I got to meet Imran Khan, who was like the god at that time. And then it went on. After that, I was the stayed a member, director of our social welfare society, got various awards, arranged various events. The blood donation drives were what my main focus was. I've lost count of how many blood donation drives I ran and how many units of blood we were able to provide to those who could not afford them, and money and drugs and medications and pretty much everything. Stayed a member of all of these other institutes in the UK. I'm still part of some of them, but I will always be part of this idea. So philanthropy, is it an art or is it a science? I'm not sure. But I think for me, the biggest thing is the feeling, because I think everything starts with a feeling. And once you have that feeling in you, then you are able to give time, money, resources to whoever, whatever needs it. Be it a person, be it a patient, be it an animal, be it a thing, be it a door. Okay? If you do not have that feeling, then you are not, in my opinion, capable of giving any part of this. There are a lot of benefits reported to philanthropy. Now, it reduces suffering, not only for the person who gets the benefit, but I believe also the person who is giving. Promotes equality, promotes justice, it builds a community. That's so important, to be able to build a community around you. There are 5 pillars to it though. And I absolutely, every time I look at this, I do a lot of reading about this. Every time I look at this, these pillars strike to me as just the essence of life, really. Inclusion, include everybody. Do not exclude based on race, religion, ethnicity. Does it matter? It does not matter. Transparency, whatever you have, put it out there. You're not good enough, put it out there. You're very good, put it out there. Let people decide. Let the other person make the decision on who they want to see, what they want to see. Talking about medicine in general, and as a surgeon in particular, right? Empowerment, you have to empower people around you, people under you, people above you in grades. Empower them so that they're able to make some decisions with you or without you. Collaboration, and of course, celebrate every small, every big thing that you are capable of achieving. I always say, I know Ben's quotes are really popular and nobody cares about my quotes, but I do have a quote. And that quote is, surgery residency, and that's the only life I've seen here, is hard. There is no need to make it harder for each other or for yourself. So I think all of this kind of comes together. In general, again, the discussion was getting too long, so I left that out. But in medicine, what can you do with any effort, physical or money-wise? You can, staffing, equipment, infrastructure, everything and anything can benefit from a little bit of philanthropy, and individually or on an institutional basis. There's a huge impact. I just put a few numbers up there for you to see how much these contributions are and how much they mean to some people out there in the world. And within the US and outside of the US. Could you be an expert in this subject? Could you be earning a living? I learned that. I did not know that, but you can actually study that as a subject, even up to the level of a PhD. Can be online versus a person. And what they are defining the degree is, it prepares you to work in fundraising, grant making, program management, and a broad range of things. However, most of these people did not go to university to study, to be a good person, I'd say. Giving back can actually, if we're talking finances, it can actually attract new patients for you, right? That orthopedic surgeon who goes to nearby safe exercise seminars probably gets a few other people who are interested in coming to see him. So there is a benefit. There's a reverse benefit. And then the negative stereotypes the doctors build around themselves based on either aptitude or just lack of time, really. It's a good way of combating those. There are several institutes. There's a huge list if any one of you is interested. And this is a great book if you have time to read. Gives you a really, really good perspective on where it started and how it all came together. Just got you some figures. It seems like this gentleman from India, he's the Tata Industries, is a pretty known name back there, is leading with donations. And then, we have quite a few people following. So it's not an unknown thought. So if I can get all of us to take that away from this talk, I would feel good about that. Is that there is no, it doesn't have to be one person doing it. All of us can do a little bit. I will end my talk with a couple local heroes. This one is local to Pakistan. Started with nothing, and then ran the world's biggest privately owned ambulance service, which is free to the consumer. There is no charge. They have an innumerable number of achievements, which I cannot put on slides. He died in 2016, and he was actually buried with state protocol, just based off of this. Animals, plants, people, infrastructure, babies, everything they're involved in, and it's a huge program. Their motto is that there is no ethnicity, there is no religion, there's no status. It is just done for everybody and anybody who needs it. I do not know how many of you are not aware of this lady. You should be aware of her. But I became aware of her when my twins were listed in her program somehow through the NICU to receive books. I did not know who she was, and then I read about her. And I found her to be really, really fascinating. This is the home she was born in. She was one of 12, and she had nothing. She has no children of her own due to some personal reasons, which are up there on the internet, but raised in poverty, she became a music legend, and there's so much out there that I put a few things in here, but she has done so much. But I think what I find the most amazing thing that she's done is this imagination library, which sends a book to every kid registered with the library from birth to age 5. And she does this because her father could not go to school or could not read or write. And my kid, they get a book every month as well, and I read it with them. Of course, when we move away from here, I'm gonna stop or list them out of it, but I did not, because I found it really fascinating. I could afford to buy that book for them, but I found it fascinating to be a part of this huge organization and the stuff that she's doing. In addition, there's so much stuff that I was unable to put it all up there, but she's a local hero, and I think we all should be aware of her. Born in Tennessee, though, so not very, very local, but still local. This is my favorite quote from her. And with this, I will be ending my talk. Thank you for listening to me. And that's my family. Any questions at all? Thank you. My God,